The night before the world ended, Alex Carter sat in his dimly lit apartment, staring at the muted news broadcast. The anchor's voice trembled as she read from a teleprompter. Authorities urge citizens to remain indoors. Reports of violent attacks continue to spread. Emergency responders are overwhelmed. Alex rubbed his temples. As a paramedic, he had seen his fair share of chaos, but this was different. The hospital was already short-staffed, and calls had been flooding in about people attacking one another, biting, clawing, refusing to stay down even after fatal injuries. His phone buzzed. It was Mark, his best friend and fellow paramedic. "Alex, get out of the city. Right now." The urgency in Mark's voice sent a chill down his spine. "What? What's going on?" "It's not just riots. It's spreading too fast. We tried treating some of them at the hospital." "Alex, they don't die. They don't die." A loud crash from the hallway made Alex jump. The sound of screams and heavy footsteps followed. He ran to the window and looked outside. The city was burning. Cars crashed into one another. People ran, some covered in blood, others chasing them with unnatural speed and hunger. "This can't be real." A piercing scream erupted from the apartment next door. Alex grabbed the nearest weapon, a baseball bat, just as his neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, slammed against his door, her face twisted in terror. "Help me! Please, they're coming!" Before Alex could open the door, something yanked her back. A man covered in blood, his jaw unhinged like a wild animal, sank his teeth into her shoulder. She let out an ear-splitting shriek before collapsing. Alex stepped back, his heart hammering. The man lifted his head, dead eyes locking onto him. Then, with terrifying speed, he lunged. Alex barely had time to react before the door slammed shut. The creature's body hit it hard, growling, snarling, scratching like a rabid dog. He had to move. He grabbed his go-bag, a habit from his days as an EMT, and threw in what he could: first aid supplies, a flashlight, water, and a hunting knife he had never actually used. The fire escape. It was his only chance. He opened the window, stepping onto the narrow metal ledge, gripping the rusted railing. Below, the streets swarmed with screaming survivors and flesh-hungry monsters. He had seen enough. If he stayed, he was dead. He climbed down, feet hitting the pavement just as another explosion rocked the block. A gas station across the street erupted in flames, the blast knocking over cars and sending bodies flying. Alex stumbled, ears ringing. A hand grabbed his arm. He spun, ready to fight, only to find a terrified young woman clutching a crying child. "Please! Please, we have to get out of here," she begged. Before Alex could respond, a horde rounded the corner. Dozens of them. Eyes lifeless. Jaws open. Skin rotting. There was no time to think. "Run!" Alex shouted, grabbing the woman's hand as they sprinted down the street. They had seconds before the monsters reached them. But in this world, seconds could mean the difference between life and death. Alex sprinted down the street, gripping the woman's hand as the child clung to her tightly. Behind them, the undead horde chased with terrifying speed, their guttural growls echoing through the burning city. The streets were a war zone, overturned cars, bodies littered across the asphalt, and buildings engulfed in flames. The air was thick with the stench of smoke, blood, and death. "We can't outrun them forever," the woman gasped, her voice laced with panic. Alex scanned the area. They needed shelter. Now. There. A parking garage. "This way," he shouted, pulling them toward the entrance. They dashed inside, the dim lighting offering a brief moment of relief. The woman collapsed against a concrete pillar, struggling to catch her breath. The child buried his face in her shoulder, sobbing softly. "Are you okay?" Alex asked, kneeling beside them. She nodded weakly. "I think so." "Your name?" "Emma. And this is my son, Noah." "I'm Alex." He checked his bag. "Limited supplies. No gun." Only a small hunting knife and a bat. Footsteps. Alex tensed. The undead were outside. Their groans grew louder as they shambled past the garage entrance, searching, sniffing the air. Emma's eyes widened in horror. She clutched Noah tighter, pressing a hand over his mouth to silence his whimpers. Alex gripped his bat, heart pounding. If they came inside, they were dead. For a tense moment, the creatures lingered. One of them, a former police officer, his uniform torn and bloodied, paused at the entrance, sniffing the air like a starving animal. Alex held his breath. "Don't move. Don't make a sound." Then, sirens. Somewhere down the block, a car alarm blared. The zombies turned and rushed toward the noise like wild animals drawn to prey. Silence. Alex exhaled, his muscles finally relaxing. "We have to move," he whispered. "We won't be safe here for long." Emma nodded, but she was shaking. "Where do we go?" Alex thought fast. Hospitals were overrun. Police stations, compromised. "There's a fire station a few blocks from here," he said. "If we're lucky, there might be supplies. Maybe even survivors." Emma hesitated. "You really think anyone's left?" Alex wasn't sure. But what other choice did they have? "Let's go." They navigated through the dark garage, moving cautiously. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every distant sound, a warning. As they reached the exit, a loud clang shattered the silence. Alex whipped around. Something moved in the shadows. A man stumbled into the light. Blood-streaked face. Torn clothing. Eyes wild with fear. "Help me," he gasped, clutching a bleeding wound on his arm. Emma grabbed Noah, stepping back. "Alex, he's bitten." Alex's stomach dropped. The man looked at him, pleading. I didn't mean to. They got me when I was running." His breath hitched. "Please, don't leave me." Alex tightened his grip on the bat. A bite meant death. And death meant coming back. The man took a step forward. "I don't want to die alone." Emma whispered, "Alex, we can't save him." Alex knew that. But staring into the man's terrified eyes, he felt a gut-wrenching pull of guilt. Footsteps. Groans. The horde was returning. There was no time. Alex swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." The man's face crumpled in despair. "Please, don't do this." But Alex turned away. The moment they stepped into the street, the screams began. Alex didn't look back. If he had, he might not have been able to keep walking. Their journey through the city was a nightmare. Cars smoldered. Bodies twitched. The scent of decay clung to the air. Alex gripped Emma's wrist, pulling her behind a wrecked van as a pack of undead tore through a store. Their guttural chewing sounds made Emma gag. Noah buried his face in her neck, muffling his cries. Alex held up a hand. "Wait." The creatures fed. For now, they weren't hunting. He motioned forward. Slow. Silent. Careful. They reached the next block. Then the next. The fire station was in sight. But something was wrong. The station doors were open. The building dark. Quiet. Too quiet. Alex hesitated. "Stay behind me." He stepped inside, bat raised. The air smelled of smoke and death. Bodies littered the ground. Blood-streaked walls. Abandoned gear. A radio crackled. Alex's heart leapt. He rushed to the dispatch console. A signal. Someone had been here. Maybe someone still was. Then, a shuffle. A low, guttural growl. Alex turned just as something lunged from the darkness. Alex barely had time to react before the creature lunged at him from the shadows. A firefighter, at least, what was left of one. His uniform was in tatters, his face half-eaten, and his dead eyes locked onto Alex with an unnatural hunger. Alex swung his bat with full force. Crack! The impact sent the creature stumbling back, but it didn't stop. It snarled, lunging again. A gunshot rang out. The zombie's head snapped back, and it collapsed in a heap. Alex spun around. A man stood at the far end of the station, lowering a pistol. He was tall, with unkempt hair and a face covered in grime. His piercing eyes didn't look relieved, they looked calculating. "You're lucky I was here," the man said, stepping forward. "That thing would have torn you apart." Emma held Noah close, tense. "Who are you?" "Name's Derek." He tucked the gun into his belt. "This place used to be safe, but as you can see, it didn't last." Alex scanned the station. The walls were smeared with blood. Bodies, some in firefighter uniforms, others in civilian clothes, lay motionless. The safe haven they had hoped for had turned into a graveyard. Derek smirked. "Guess you're looking for supplies, huh? Too bad. Anything useful is already gone." Alex tightened his grip on his bat. Something about Derek felt off. "Then why are you still here?" Alex asked. Derek's smirk widened. "Waiting. Seeing who else comes through." Alex's gut twisted. Was Derek really a survivor, or a predator? Emma shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should go, Alex." Derek chuckled. "Oh, I don't think you should rush off so soon. See, people don't last long on their own. You need someone who knows how to survive." Alex's eyes narrowed. "And that's you?" Derek stepped closer. "I know how to get out of the city. I know places the military tried to evacuate. I even know where a real safe zone might be." He paused, then added, "But I don't help people for free." Alex clenched his jaw. "We're not giving you anything." Derek smirked. "Oh, I think you will." A click. Alex froze. Another man emerged from the shadows, a rifle aimed straight at them. "Meet my friend, Ray," Derek said, casually. "We run into people like you all the time. People desperate to survive." Emma tightened her hold on Noah, fear flashing in her eyes. Alex's mind raced. They were outgunned. Outnumbered. Derek sighed dramatically. "Look, let's not make this harder than it needs to be. Just drop your bags. Hand over your weapons. And maybe, just maybe, I'll let you walk away." Alex knew their supplies wouldn't last forever, but without them, they wouldn't last the night. He tightened his grip on the bat. "Not happening." Derek sighed. "Suit yourself." The gunshot came fast. But not from Derek. Ray collapsed. Blood pooled beneath him as his body went limp. Derek turned, eyes wide with shock, just as Emma fired a second shot. The bullet grazed his shoulder, making him stumble back with a curse. Alex didn't hesitate. He rushed forward, swinging the bat with all his strength. Crack! Derek dropped to the ground, unconscious. Alex turned to Emma, still gripping the pistol with trembling hands. "You," he swallowed, stunned. "You just..." Emma's breath was shaky. "I told you. I wasn't going to let Noah die." Alex stared at the gun in her hands. Where had she? Then he saw it. Ray's holster. While Derek had been talking, Emma had taken the gun off the dead man. Smart. "Come on," she said, her voice steady now. "We have to go." Alex nodded, grabbing Derek's pistol before leading them toward the fire station exit. But as they stepped into the street, Alex glanced back at Derek's unconscious form. He would wake up. And when he did, he wouldn't forget what they had done. They needed to move. Fast. The city was still burning. The undead were still hunting. And now, they had made an enemy. The city outside was no safer than it had been when they first arrived. The streets were desolate, charred remains of buildings, overturned cars, and scattered debris that once made up the bustling metropolis now seemed like a broken monument to civilization's fall. Alex led the way, his senses heightened. His eyes flickered to every shadow, his ears straining for any hint of movement. The undead were never far. Emma and Noah followed closely behind, the weight of the journey pressing heavily on them. Noah had fallen quiet, his small hand tightly gripping his mother's. The trauma was beginning to show. "How far?" Emma asked, her voice hoarse. Alex didn't answer immediately, as he scanned the horizon. The fire station was behind them now, a place that had offered little solace. Their only option was to keep moving forward, but the road ahead was full of unknown dangers. "A few miles," he said finally, his voice low. "We'll head toward the outskirts of the city. There's a small town, or at least there should be." He glanced over his shoulder. "We don't know what's waiting for us, but it's better than staying here." Emma nodded grimly, though Alex could see the doubt in her eyes. How much longer could they go on? They had no food, no clear plan, and the city was no longer a place they could trust. Every step they took felt like one further away from the chance of salvation. They walked in silence for hours. The city, once so full of life, felt hollow now. Every corner they turned seemed more dangerous than the last, and the fear that followed them was palpable. Their journey had begun to feel endless. "What do we do if we don't find anything?" Emma finally broke the silence. Alex hesitated. The truth was, he didn't have a clear answer. They were running out of time, out of hope. But to say that out loud would be to acknowledge a reality they couldn't yet face. "We will find something," he said, his voice firm. "Even if it's just a temporary shelter. We'll figure it out." But deep down, he wasn't sure. The world had changed. And it was becoming increasingly clear that their survival wasn't just about outsmarting the zombies anymore, it was about facing the other humans who had lost their humanity. They passed through the remains of what used to be a shopping district, stepping over glass and rubble. The sky above was a muted gray, the sun hidden by an endless blanket of smoke. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Noah tugged at Emma's sleeve. "Mom. I'm hungry." Emma's eyes softened, and she knelt down to comfort him. "I know, sweetheart. We'll find food soon. Just a little longer, okay?" Alex kept his eyes forward, his thoughts heavy. Food was becoming a bigger issue than they could ignore. But every building they passed had been looted or destroyed. There was nothing left to scavenge. Suddenly, a screech split the air. Alex spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. A car, an old sedan, roared down the street. The tires screeched as it fishtailed, its driver clearly struggling to maintain control. The car slammed into the side of a building and came to a halt. Alex's heart pounded in his chest. The car was barely 10 feet away, and for a moment, he wasn't sure if it was another group of survivors or someone worse. Then, the door to the car opened. A man stumbled out. Blood was smeared across his shirt, and he looked disoriented, panicked. He was clutching a duffel bag to his chest, but he barely seemed aware of his surroundings. "Help!" he shouted, stumbling toward Alex and Emma. "Please! I need help!" Alex stepped forward cautiously, but something about the man's wild eyes made him pause. His breath was rapid, his movements erratic. "Wait," Alex said sharply, holding up a hand. "What happened? Are you bitten?" The man looked at him, his eyes wide and filled with terror. No, I'm fine. I'm just trying to get out of here." His voice broke off, and he stumbled, nearly collapsing in the street. Emma moved to help him, but Alex grabbed her arm, his instincts screaming at him to be careful. "Stay back." The man's desperation deepened. "I swear I'm not infected. I just need somewhere safe, somewhere to go." He collapsed onto the pavement, clutching his chest. A low growl rumbled from behind them. Alex's heart froze. The undead. He spun around, and his stomach sank. The street was filled with them, slow-moving, but coming closer. The man had drawn them in with his shouting. "Run!" Alex shouted. "Get to cover!" Without thinking, he grabbed the man by the arm, pulling him to his feet. The man barely reacted, his body trembling, too weak to fight back. They ran. But the horde was already closing in. Alex knew they weren't going to make it far. The road ahead was blocked by the undead, and there was no way they could outrun them. "We need to hide." Alex's voice was harsh as he pushed them into an alley. The group huddled behind a dumpster, trying to stay out of sight as the horde shuffled past. Alex's heart pounded in his ears. This wasn't good. They had no escape route, no backup plan. And the worst part? They weren't even sure they were safe for long. The undead passed by in a slow, endless stream, their groans filling the air like a haunting, constant hum. Alex, Emma, and Noah huddled in the narrow alley behind the dumpster, holding their breaths as the creatures shuffled past. The man they'd rescued was shaking uncontrollably, his eyes wide with terror. Alex had always been good at thinking on his feet, but right now, there was no clear way out. They were surrounded, their options limited. The only thing they could do was wait. Hope? "We can't stay here," Emma whispered, glancing nervously at the sea of zombies moving along the street. "We'll be trapped." "I know," Alex muttered. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, his pulse hammering in his chest. Every second spent in this alley felt like a countdown. The moment the zombies turned their attention back to the area, they were done for. "Help," the man whispered, his voice barely audible over the distant moans. He clutched the duffel bag tighter, eyes flicking from one side of the alley to the other. I can't breathe. Please, I need water. I need to rest." Alex stared at him, weighing his options. The man had been frantic when they found him, but now, he was starting to seem like a liability. The last thing they needed was someone too weak to move, someone who would drag them down. But Emma's voice was gentle as she kneeled beside the man. "We're almost out of here, all right? Just hold on. We'll make it." Alex shot her a look. She didn't trust him either, but she couldn't abandon someone who was clearly in pain. "We'll give him water," Alex said, his voice firm. "But if he slows us down again, we leave him behind. Understand?" Emma nodded, but her eyes were filled with concern. "He's sick, Alex. We can't just leave him." Alex's jaw tightened. "It's not about that anymore. It's about getting Noah out of here." The man let out a soft sob, clutching the duffel bag like it was his only lifeline. His ragged breaths echoed through the alley. For a long moment, the tension hung in the air, thick with uncertainty. Finally, Alex made the decision. "Let's move, now." Alex pulled the man to his feet, ignoring the protesting groan he made. Emma handed him a small water bottle from her pack, and the man gulped it down greedily. But there wasn't time to waste. The zombies hadn't completely passed them yet. They were getting closer, their groans growing louder as the undead shambled toward their location. Alex's heart thudded painfully against his chest. They had no choice now. "Move," he barked. He gripped the man's arm, pulling him along, while Emma ushered Noah forward. Every step felt like it could be their last. The alley opened up into another street, this one even more chaotic than the last. The city was a maze of destruction, and it felt as though the undead were everywhere. Alex scanned the surroundings, looking for any signs of movement, any open door or window they could use as cover. His eyes landed on an abandoned building ahead. It wasn't much, just a shell of a structure, but it might offer some shelter. He didn't hesitate. "There. We go inside, now." The group sprinted across the street, their footsteps echoing through the empty space. Alex barely registered the shrieks and moans growing louder behind them as they made it to the door. It was locked. "Get it open!" Alex shouted. Emma rushed forward, her hands trembling as she fumbled with the handle. The man groaned in pain beside Alex, but he barely noticed. The door wouldn't budge. "Hurry!" Alex snapped, panic creeping into his voice. And then, finally, the door creaked open. They poured inside, slamming the door shut behind them. The building was eerily silent, the only sound their labored breathing. "Are we safe?" Noah whispered, his voice filled with fear. Alex didn't answer immediately. He wasn't sure. They hadn't seen any undead in here yet, but that didn't mean they were alone. The city had become a hunting ground. "We're safe for now," he said finally, his voice steady but strained. "But we have to keep moving. We can't stay here too long." Emma nodded, pulling Noah close as she scanned the room. The building had once been a warehouse, filled with boxes and broken equipment, but now it was nothing more than an empty shell. They needed supplies, food, anything they could find. But the fear that had been gnawing at Alex's insides all day began to take hold of him more fiercely. They couldn't keep running. The world was closing in. As Alex moved through the dark, quiet building, his thoughts turned back to the man they had helped. He had been weak, desperate. And yet, now, Alex wasn't sure he could trust him. Was it possible the man was hiding something? Was he simply too scared to make it on his own, or was there something more sinister at play? Before Alex could form another thought, a sudden noise shattered the silence. A scraping sound. Then the unmistakable shuffle of feet. The undead were inside. And this time, there was nowhere to run. The scraping sound grew louder, echoing through the hollow warehouse. Alex's heart raced as he turned toward the source of the noise. His mind was already calculating their chances of survival, trying to figure out if they could escape, if they could fight their way out. The undead were inside. Emma grabbed Noah tightly, pulling him behind a stack of crates. Her eyes were wide, panicked, but she stayed silent, waiting for Alex's command. The man they'd rescued, Derek, was frozen in place, his eyes wild as he scanned the dimly lit space. Alex could feel the cold sweat running down his back. This was it. They had nowhere to run, no clear exit. The building had only one main door, and it was on the other side of the room, too far to reach without drawing the attention of the horde. The scraping sound came closer. Someone, was dragging itself across the floor. Alex's breath caught in his throat. The creature was moving slowly, methodically, as though it knew exactly where to go. Then, just beyond the shadows, a figure emerged. A zombie, its body mangled and half-eaten, stumbled forward. Its gaze fixed on Derek, who was standing still, his eyes wide with terror. The zombie's mouth gaped open, revealing sharp, decayed teeth. "No!" Derek shouted, his voice cracking. He staggered backward, tripping over a pile of broken boards. The zombie lunged at him. Alex didn't hesitate. With one swift motion, he pulled Derek aside, shoving him out of the creature's path. The zombie missed its mark, but it didn't stop. It turned, its growls growing louder. "We need to get out of here, now!" Alex shouted. But just as they moved to run for the door, another figure stepped out of the shadows. Then another. And another. More zombies. They were surrounded. The group stumbled back, their eyes darting to the door, but there was no way they could reach it without getting caught. Alex's mind raced. He glanced at the windows, they were too high, too small to climb through. The only option left was to fight. "Derek, get to the crates!" Alex barked. "We'll make a stand there." Derek nodded, his face pale. He scrambled to his feet and bolted toward a stack of crates near the back of the building. Emma and Noah followed quickly behind, but Alex lingered for just a moment, watching the zombies close in. One of them, a tall, gaunt figure, reached out with a gnarled hand, grabbing Alex's arm. The grip was ice cold, its nails digging into his skin. Adrenaline surged through him. He swung his bat with all his might, connecting with the zombie's skull. The creature crumpled, falling to the ground in a heap. But the moment of victory was short-lived. More were coming. "Get back!" Alex shouted. He pushed past the fallen zombie and sprinted toward the crates. Behind him, the sound of growling and shuffling grew louder, and the door, their only way out, was now blocked. The zombies were closing in, surrounding the group like a storm closing in. Emma pulled Noah into the corner, keeping him shielded behind a stack of wooden crates. Derek had already grabbed a metal pipe from the ground and was preparing to fight. "We're not going down without a fight," Alex said, gripping his bat tightly. "Stay together. Focus. We make our stand here." The first zombie reached them, its gnarled fingers outstretched, its eyes locked on Noah. Emma reacted instantly, firing her gun. The shot rang out, and the zombie dropped, its head exploding in a burst of blood and bone. But more were coming. One after another, they poured into the room, filling the narrow space with their guttural growls. Alex swung his bat again, smashing it into the skull of another zombie, but the force of the blow left him off balance. A cold hand grabbed his shoulder, and Alex spun, barely dodging the bite. He swung the bat again, this time with more force, knocking the zombie back. "Stay back," he yelled to the others. "Get ready to move." Emma fired again, but her shots were growing scarce. The ammo was running low, and each shot felt like it was taking too much time. The group was running out of options. Derek swung the pipe wildly, knocking another zombie to the ground, but it wasn't enough. The horde was relentless, and they were being overwhelmed. "We can't hold them off forever," Derek shouted, panic in his voice. Alex's mind was racing. What could they do? How could they escape this mess? The horde was getting closer, and they had no clear way out. Then, just as the situation seemed most dire, a loud crash echoed through the building. The main door, broke open. For a split second, Alex thought it was another wave of zombies, but then, a group of survivors burst through the door, weapons drawn. They were here to help. "Come on. We've got your back," one of the newcomers shouted, raising a machete as he cleaved through the nearest zombie. Alex didn't hesitate. This was their chance. "Move," he shouted, pushing Derek toward the open door. The group scrambled toward the exit, their hearts pounding in their chests. There was no time to look back. They had a chance to escape, and they had to take it. But as they burst through the door and into the open air, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't seen the last of the undead. This was only the beginning. The outside air was a brutal contrast to the dim, suffocating darkness of the warehouse. The daylight hit Alex like a wave, but the relief was short-lived. They'd escaped one danger, but the world outside had become a place where survival wasn't guaranteed. It was an endless battle. The survivors who had rescued them didn't waste time with introductions. They were on the move, moving swiftly as they ushered the group toward a small, fortified building not far from the warehouse. Alex could hear the unmistakable shuffle of the undead in the distance, their groans growing louder as they spread through the area. The survivors seemed prepared for the danger, their movements purposeful. One of the men, a tall figure with a scruffy beard and a blood-stained jacket, spoke to Alex as they walked. "You're lucky we found you. This area's been crawling with walkers for days. Didn't think anyone would be left alive." Alex nodded but didn't respond. His mind was focused on what came next. They were safe for now, but the constant fear of being trapped again made it hard to relax. He scanned their surroundings, tattered buildings, overturned cars, broken windows, and the sounds of distant shuffling. The city had become a ghost town, a wasteland filled with only the undead and the occasional desperate survivor. Inside the building, they found shelter, a small, abandoned community center that had been fortified with metal sheets, wooden planks, and scrap. The survivors had set up makeshift barriers and kept a watchful eye on the streets outside. "We've been holding out here for a few days," the bearded man continued, motioning for the group to sit down in the sparse, dimly lit room. "Not much left to scavenge, but we have food. Water too. We can help you out." Alex glanced at Emma and Noah, then turned to Derek, who had collapsed into one of the chairs, breathing heavily. His face was still pale, and he seemed weaker than before. His condition was worsening. "We need to rest, but we can't stay here long," Alex said, his voice low. "The moment the zombies figure out we're here, we're sitting ducks." One of the survivors, a young woman with short black hair and a grim expression, spoke up. "You're right. We've seen how fast the horde can grow, but for now, we have a little time. She reached into a backpack and pulled out a small first aid kit. "We've got supplies. We can help your friend too." Alex glanced at Derek again, who had begun to cough violently. The man was in bad shape, there was no denying that. The dehydration and exhaustion were taking their toll. Derek's desperation had been clear earlier, but now, it was more than just fear. He was sick. "We need to keep an eye on him," Alex said. "If he's infected, if he's bitten, we can't risk it." Emma, who had been silent since they entered the building, nodded. "He's not bitten, but he's in bad shape. We need to make sure he doesn't get worse." The young woman gave a solemn nod. "I'll keep an eye on him. We've all been there. If you need anything, let me know." Alex was about to thank her when the sound of banging on the door cut through the room. "They're here." The survivors rushed to the window, peering through the gaps in the makeshift barricades. Alex's heart skipped a beat. The sound of the undead wasn't far away, they had been drawn in by the noise, by the presence of the living. The group's temporary haven was already being tested. "They'll break through soon," the bearded man said grimly. "We've got a couple of rifles, a few handguns, but we'll need to move before they get too close." Alex's mind raced. The door wouldn't hold for long, and they were surrounded. Escape was their only option. "We can't fight them all off," Alex said, eyes darting to the exits. "We need to get out of here, now. While we still have a chance." Derek was still sitting in the corner, breathing heavily, his face pale. Emma knelt next to him, trying to get him to sit up, but it was clear he was too weak. "We can't leave him behind." Emma's voice was quiet, but Alex could hear the determination behind it. Alex looked at her for a long moment, his mind swirling with the weight of the decision. They couldn't afford to waste time. If they didn't leave now, they wouldn't have the chance later. "We'll carry him," Alex said, finally. "But we have to move fast." The bearded man nodded, reaching for one of the rifles leaning against the wall. "We'll cover you. But you need to keep moving." The sound of the zombies' growls grew louder, closer. The building was on the brink of collapse. There was no time left. Alex grabbed Emma's hand, and they rushed toward Derek, helping him to his feet. He was weak, barely able to stand, but they had no other choice. Emma took one of the bags of supplies, and Alex grabbed another. They had to leave with what they could carry. "We'll go out the back," the bearded man said, his voice urgent. "Stick to the alleyways. It's safer that way." Alex nodded, leading the way. The door to the back was already secured, but it wouldn't hold for long. As soon as they pushed through, they were in the alley. The streets outside were deserted, but they couldn't afford to relax. The zombies were closing in. They had to keep moving. As they ran through the back streets, Alex felt the weight of every step. The world outside was collapsing, and survival was a game of inches. They couldn't stop. If they did, they'd be swarmed. There was no way to know where they were headed, but the only choice was forward. And in that moment, Alex realized something. The only thing more dangerous than the horde outside was the uncertainty of what waited ahead. The streets were eerily silent as the group moved through the shadows of ruined buildings. Alex could feel the weight of time pressing down on them. Every second they spent in the open was a risk, and the further they ventured into the unknown, the more desperate the situation became. The air was thick with the scent of decay and the fear of what might come next. They were all exhausted. Derek had fallen silent, his breathing labored as Emma supported him, helping him stumble along the cracked pavement. Alex could see the fear in her eyes. She didn't want to lose him. The survivors who had helped them earlier had scattered. They'd given them directions, but the horde was already swarming their location. The only thing that remained was their ability to move fast, to stay one step ahead of the undead. Alex's mind raced with thoughts of what to do next. They couldn't keep running forever. Sooner or later, they would run out of options. The alleyways were no longer safe, and the main roads were filled with walkers. Their destination wasn't clear. They had no place to go except forward, through the wreckage of a world they once knew. Then, they found it. The abandoned gas station sat at the corner of a long-forgotten street. It was old, run down, and covered in grime, but there was something that caught Alex's attention: the large, metal door at the back of the building. It was reinforced, likely a storage or maintenance area, but it looked sturdy enough to hold for a while. "That's our best shot," Alex said, his voice filled with urgency. "We need to get inside. Now." Emma nodded, pushing Derek ahead. "We'll make it. We just need a little more time." The sound of growling broke through the tension. Alex turned to see figures in the distance, zombies. They were still far off, but they were closing in. The group broke into a sprint. They reached the door just as the first zombie turned the corner, its groans signaling the start of another chase. Alex grabbed the handle and yanked it open, throwing himself and the others into the small, enclosed space. The door slammed shut just as the first wave of undead arrived. Inside, the air was damp and musty, but it was safe, for now. Alex quickly scanned the area. The storage room was filled with crates, barrels, and rusted equipment. It wasn't much, but it was enough for them to catch their breath and regroup. Emma helped Derek onto a nearby crate, his condition growing worse with each passing minute. He was no longer able to stand on his own, his face gaunt and pale. The infection was progressing rapidly. "We don't have much time," Alex said, crouching beside Derek. "We can't stay here forever. We need to find a way to leave this place, but we have to keep moving." Derek's eyes fluttered open. He looked at Alex, his voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry. I didn't want this." Alex's chest tightened. He reached out, placing a hand on Derek's shoulder. "Don't apologize. You fought. We all fought. Now we need to focus on surviving." The sound of the undead grew closer outside. The door wasn't reinforced enough to hold them off for long. "We'll have to fight our way out," Alex said, standing up. "We're not just going to sit here and wait to be overrun. We'll take out the first wave, make a break for the next block, and find another place to hold up. We're not done yet." Emma nodded. "I'll cover you." She pulled out her handgun, checking the ammo. It was almost empty. "I'll need a little help, but I'm ready." The air outside was filled with the groans of the undead, and Alex could feel the weight of the moment. They had no choice but to fight. They couldn't allow themselves to be consumed by fear. They would face this together. Alex tightened his grip on the bat. "Stay focused. We'll go out swinging." Without another word, he opened the door, stepping into the alley. The horde was closer now, their grotesque figures shambling toward them. The smell of decay, the sight of their torn clothes and bloody limbs, sent a chill down Alex's spine. But there was no turning back. They had to move. Emma took the first shot, the loud report of the gun echoing through the alley. A zombie dropped to the ground, but it wasn't enough. The horde surged forward, their growls filling the air. Alex swung his bat, crushing skulls as he fought his way through the group. Each strike felt like it was draining the last bit of energy he had left. Derek, still weak, was at the back, holding on as best he could. Alex couldn't let him fall. "Not now. Push forward." Alex yelled, swinging at another zombie. "We're not stopping here." The group made their way toward the next block, each step a battle. The streets were teeming with zombies, but they fought with everything they had. The group's resolve was unshakable. They had come too far to give up now. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached another building. The door was locked, but with one powerful shove, Alex broke it open. Inside, they collapsed, panting, bruised, and bloodied. But they had made it, for now. The world outside was a wasteland, a place of death and destruction, but Alex knew one thing: they were still alive. And that meant hope wasn't gone. Not yet. The end.